welcome back to the Cabbage Files. I am the CabbageWarrior, and we're trying something new on this one. This is Storytime with Cabbage, and this is going to be a spooky story time, and not just any old story time. So what I will try to do is try to read some spooky ghost stories from books, or some ghost stories I'd find online, or maybe even a creepypasta. Just whatever suits the time at that when I decide to do these. So with this one I put out a few days ago, I have a book right here of ghost stories, and I put out on Twitter a few days ago a poll of 3 stories from the book, and I was undecided as to which one to read because all 3 were really good stories. So I left it up to you to decide, and a unanimous vote was to read the story that will be reading tonight. So the book itself is Campfire Ghost Stories by Joanne Christensen, and it's a really good book. It's got a lot of really good stories in it. So all credit due to Miss Christensen for writing the book and putting the stories together, because these are really well done stories. So that being said, without further ado, this one is called The Calling Woman. There once was a hard-working trapper whose wife was a terrible vexation to him. She routinely spent more money than what the couple had, complained about every little thing, and nagged at her husband both night and day. "You can't be trusted to do a thing right," she often told the trapper, and he seldom argued in his own defense. The poor man had learned early in their marriage that to do so was a foolish waste of time. Instead, the trapper counted his few blessings, not the least of which was that he spent many blissful hours alone when he went into the wilderness to tend to his trap lines. There came a terrible day, however, when the wife decided that she should accompany the trapper on one of his trips. "I want to see that you're not wasting time up there," said the wife. "How do I know you couldn't be working harder and earning us a better living? We'll go out to the cabin together this time, so I can keep my eye on you." The trapper was dismayed, but said nothing. He simply hoped that the rough state of the isolated little cabin and the cold, bleak wilderness conditions would be sufficient to discourage her from staying. He was ultimately disappointed. The wife did complain bitterly about her rustic surroundings, but she also made it clear that she was staying. "This is what you come to when I'm not around," she harped. "Slovenly conditions and lazy ways." Then she rattled off a list of chores for her husband to attend to. "I have a trapline to set," he protested, but he received no sympathy or understanding. "You can't work the trapline after the sun's gone down," the wife stated, "so that's when you can see to the cleaning and repairs around the cabin." The trapper toyed with the notion, saying, "And when shall I sleep?" In the end, however, he thought that showing a smart tongue would only serve to bring more work raining down upon him. For several days the trapper labored. When morning came, he went out on his trap line. In the evening, he dealt with some chore around the cabin. He sorely missed the days when he could work unsupervised, take his leisure in front of a roaring fire, and sleep until he was ready to rise. Happily, there came one day when the trapper had to venture out to tend to the most remote portion of the line. It meant several hours of travel and necessitated camping overnight. The man had never looked quite so forward to sleeping on the cold, hard ground. "Stay close to the cabin," he told his wife before he left. "This bush is wild and thick, and you could easily get lost." The wife took the warning as an insult. "I can care for myself far better than you can," she snapped back. "I guarantee you I'll do as I like." The trapper looked at his wife. Then, with her firmly set jaw and her mean eyes, and he recognized an opportunity. Knowing that she was contrary enough to defy him on principle, he warned her once more. "Stay in the cabin, woman," he demanded. "The deep woods is no place for someone as helpless as you. If you must go out, keep the cabin well in sight. Never, ever go wandering off." He turned quickly, then, and left. The last sight he had of his ill-tempered wife's face showed her features twisting into an expression of furious defiance. It was an image that would stay with him for a very long time. The trapper went away for 2 days and 2 nights. During the long hike back to the cabin, he could not help noticing the tiny tingle of anticipation that was stirring in his stomach. "Hello!" he called out when the cabin came into sight, but his wife did not answer. "Hello!" he said again as he threw open the door, but his wife was not inside. "Hello! Hello!" he chuckled to himself as he felt the cold grate of the fireplace and saw that no lunch had been laid out upon the table. It was obvious that his wife was gone. She had wandered into the wilderness to defy him and had gotten herself lost. The trapper, feeling giddy and free, set about making himself a little meal. He opened a tin of beans and sliced up a generous portion of salt pork. As he built up a fire to warm himself and the food, however, he suffered a terrible shock. There, in the dancing yellow flames, he could see his wife's face. She appeared every bit as enraged as she had 2 days earlier, the last time the trapper had set eyes on her. "Making yourself a meal, are you?" the firewife shrieked. "Stuffing your face before you make the slightest effort to find me and give me a decent burial? Isn't that just like you?" The trapper gave a startled cry, dropped his frying pan and his food, and scrambled backward away from the haunted fire. "Squawking like a baby?" sneered his wife. "Like a sniveling little—" But before she could finish, the trapper poured a dipper of water over her flaming head. The fire sputtered out, and the trapper was relieved to find himself alone once more. The idea of food no longer appealed to him, and the hour was growing late. "Sleep is what I need," the trapper muttered. "A good long rest will banish these terrible hallucinations from my brain." Afraid to build another fire, he wrapped himself in every blanket that he could find and made himself comfortable upon the sagging old mattress. He would have been content enough had it not been for the bitter storm that arose. The wind howled and shrieked, blowing frigid, damp air through the chinks in the logs and carrying with it the screeching voice of the trapper's wife. "Lazy as an old dog," she wailed, "sleeping when you should be trying to find me." The trapper struggled out of his laird cocoon and clapped his hands over his ears. "Leave me be," he moaned as he lit a lamp, all the while trying not to look too directly into the match flame. When he set the lamp down on the washstand, though, he did glance into the battered tin water bucket. There, wavering beneath the thin disc of ice on top, was a watery vision of his wrathful wife. "You're wasting time and shirking your duty," she screeched. "Get out into the woods and find me!" The trapper could stand no more. Realizing that he would never have a moment's peace until he found his wife's remains, he buttoned his coat, laced his boots, and trudged out the door into the cold, dark night. "Find me!" the wife's keening floated over the treetops. The trapper listened carefully and then attempted to follow the sound of the voice that he had tried, for most of his married life, to avoid. "Find me!" she wailed, and he made every effort to, crashing through the dense underbrush in the bittering cold. The source of the wife's harping voice was difficult to pinpoint, though. The trapper would walk for a time in one direction, certain that he was growing closer, but then, without warning, the voice would suddenly seem to be coming from a great distance to the left, or to the right, or even from behind him. The trapper spent hours walking through the forest in circles, until he was frightened, desperate, and hopelessly lost. "I can't find you," he finally cried into the bitter night. His wife did not answer, but a sudden gust of freezing wind rattled the dry branches that hung above his head. It sounded very much like a low, gloating chuckle. The trapper froze to death before dawn. It has been many years since then. The area remains wild and remote, although some outdoor enthusiasts do hike in for camping excursions. Few stay longer than a day or two, though, and none make the journey twice. They say that the area is far too from civilization, and that the mind can play tricks on a person there. For often they hear a woman's voice on the wind, calling for someone to find her. And sometimes they see the wispy specter of a weary, wandering old trapper who is doomed to follow that shrieking voice for all time. And that does that for the story. So that's where I'm going to leave this one. And thank you all for listening and watching. And if you like this, go ahead and hit that like button. If you'd like to have another story read, or would like to read another story, you can drop a comment below, tweet it at me at CabbageFiles on Twitter. You can even request a story, and I will look into it and possibly even read it. So there's that as well. So thank you all so much for watching. And if you want to see more, hit subscribe, and I will see you all in the next one.